there's a couple things we can still do. One of which is that if you look closely and listen closely, there's these little peaks in the waveform that are just like bursts of water that come out every once in a while. And we can actually recreate that through synthesis as well. So let's pull up a new EQ, default again, and we're going to open him up. And so what we're going to do is set up some places where we want certain frequencies to get boosted, and we can have them boosted at pretty much random intervals through the RTPC method that we used before, but doing it with gain instead of frequency. So let's start here. I'm going to turn these bands off again, and we're going to do a peaking curve, and we're going to set this frequency to 400, and we're going to set the Q to 0.5. Don't go through. Awesome. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to do band 1, and we're going to do band 1 gain because we're wanting to alter the gain now, not the frequency. We're fine with that 400 frequency for these waterfall little bursts. So we're going to go default. And so this here now is the change in volume, the maximum minimum change in volume. So we're never going to want to reduce the volume of band 1 below 0. These are bursts of sound, so they don't really need to go below 0. So we're going to set it at this first one at 0. And then the maximum, let's put this at, I think 5 will be a good starting point. So every once in a while, it'll get a 5 decibel boost. We'll see how this goes. And so from here, we can change things again. And we're going to want to do a random waveform again, because if you're doing a, actually, I stand corrected. Let's do actually a saw up waveform, because that will get a more consistent peak, if you will, every time the burst happens. If it's a random waveform, it won't sound quite right. But what we do want to do is randomize how often this happens. So if we were just like to do it now, you're going to hear it sounds a little weird and a little unnatural that it keeps happening very consistently with these bursts. Let me actually turn it up so you can hear what I'm talking about at this maximum. So you can hear that it's a very consistent rhythm if we do it like that. So that's not what we want. So we're going to, first of all, we're going to put this back down to, let's actually put it at like 7, so it's a bit more audible, 6.99, basically the same thing. And so we don't want this to continually happen at that same pace. So we're going to start this at 0.5, and then similar to before, we're going to have this randomizer. And I really don't want it any more frequent than 0.5. So I'm going to have no maximum offset, but for the minimum, let's do negative 0.45. So it's going to randomize between 0.05 seconds and 0.5. So awesome. We're going to close that. And let's take a listen to it again. And I'm going to raise this all the way up just so we can hear things a bit more. But again, this is not where the final is going to be. Cool. So that already sounds pretty good, aside from how loud that frequency gets. I think just to smooth it out a little bit, I'm going to add an attack of 1. And then we'll bring this back down to where it was at 7 or 6.99 like we had before. I'm going to keep it at 7 though. So this is going to sound pretty good here. And I actually want to open this back up. And so there's kind of another spot I was hearing in the recorded audio file that is a bit higher, kind of the higher end of the waterfall sounds. So similarly, we're going to have a peaking curve here, Q of 1. We're actually going to keep this frequency at 1000 hertz, believe it or not. So sometimes the default settings are the best. But we're going to do band 2, and we're going to alter the gain again with an LFO to default. Okay, so we have this showing up again, and putting these in a similar place. Let's just do that for now. I think I'm not actually going to want this as loud for a maximum. It might start sounding a little weird. So we're going to set it to 4. Let's do 4. Actually, we're going to set it higher for now, just so you can hear the differences, but we'll definitely set it back to a more reasonable level. And then we're just going to have the same settings we did before. So first of all, let's just do this so you can hear that consistency again and why you don't want that. Definitely don't want that. So let's set this to 0.5 again. And we're going to have a negative 0.45 for the minimum offset. And we're going to keep that 0 for the maximum offset. All right, definitely sounds a bit better. Let's adjust the maximum gain a bit. Now let's take another listen. Doesn't sound quite right to me. Let's smooth this out a little bit. Let's do some smoothing. I might want to do smoothing on both of these actually. So let's do a 50 smoothing on this and on you. Give this another listen. I think what we really want to do actually is bring this down a bit. It might just be getting too loud for its own good with these bursts. Awesome. Yeah, these are more just meant to be subtle more than anything. So now that we have those, let's take another listen for comparison. We're actually going to bring this output level down just a bit. I noticed it was getting close to peaking. So we have that. And now let's listen back to the waterfall that is recorded. So we're very, very close, but there's a few frequencies that are still there we kind of want to get rid of to get it even closer. Let's make another EQ. Can't go wrong. Well, actually you can if you go too far, but I think we're going to be good here. So we're on our third EQ. Let's go back to effects settings. Check, check. And we're going to put another peaking. And we want to set this gain to 4,000. And let's see. -2. Oh, -2. Sounds good here. So let's give that a listen off and on. And on. So it's subtle, but it does sound closer for sure. There's still a little bit too much high end on the noise. So we're going to bring that down a bit with another peaking curve over here on band 2. So let's do a -2 gain. We're going to set the frequency to 13,000 hertz and leave the Q at 1. So let's listen to this off and on. And we're going to have it on. So you can hear that higher end of the noise is there, but not quite as offensive. One thing we can do for a little extra measure is add a little randomness to when what frequency of the white noise is reduced. And so we're going to do that similar to how we did before. So we're going to do a band 2 frequency, default LFO. And let's set you to 11,000, just so it's above and below our starting frequency of this of 13,000. And we're going to set this to 15,000. So there's our maximum minimum. We're going to open this up, and we're going to have I really liked that frequency of the alteration that we had before with 0.5. Oh, excuse me, 0.5 is what we want. And we're going to enable this and have the same minimum offset. And we're going to make this random again. And we're going to smooth things out just to be sure. So let's take another listen now. I think that sounds really good. The only thing I do want to do is pull the maximum down for these two bands again back in the second EQ, the maximum gain that is. So let's pull these down and give it all another listen. So I'm going to have you at 4. Cool, now let's compare this to our recorded waterfall sound. So that actually sounds pretty darn close. Well, those are the settings I have for this. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of ways to play with this and continue to add some randomization, some depth, but this is a really great starting point, and you could really use this in even indie game, or heck, even something that is maybe a little larger. So I hope this was super helpful for you and might have you more interested in using procedural sounds in your games. I'm probably going to try to mess around with this even more, make some other interesting and cool procedural sound effects. So if you're wanting more of this and wanting more of those game audio analysis videos, feel free to stick around and leave comments if you have any questions about procedural audio or Wwise or just game audio in general. Until then, have a great day. I'll see you next time.